Hey guys, so for today's movie review, I'm going to talk about the film The Spectacular Now. It's a film that I rented from Redbox not too long ago. And in this film, you guys, it's basically kind of like a coming of age story in like the style of something you'd see from like the 1980s. Um, Basically, there's this guy named Sutter, and he is kind of like the party hardy, always into the drinking parties kind of kid. He's a high school kid, so obviously he's underage, so that factors into him getting into even more trouble. And he basically, he's always being a part of the party crowd. He's a very social kid, has a lot of friends, and um, has this girlfriend that he's really happy with. And things kind of come to a close for him for a while when him and the girlfriend break up. And, he's kind of getting out of the party scene for a little bit. His grades are suffering in school. But one night when he does decide to party, he ends up having a huge hangover in the morning and he wakes up in the front lawn of a girl named Aimee, played by Shailene Woodley from The Descendants, for those who saw that movie. She's going to be in the Divergent movie soon, too, for those who plan to see that. And so her name is Aimee, and basically, he finds out that basically this girl's never had a boyfriend, and she's not really a part of the party scene, and she doesn't think she's beautiful, and all these things that you would really not think a girl like this would be like, and because when you first see her, like, oh wow, that's a really pretty girl, and kind of like what this guy's thinking, he's probably assuming that she has like a boyfriend somewhere and things of that nature, but it's not the case. So luckily for this guy, he's kind of the first person to be her boyfriend and to really kind of experience, because basically this was the first girl he got to date where she really allowed him to be himself, and really allowed him to be the productive person that he's kind of meant to be, because with all these party scenes going on for him, he really doesn't get to be himself, and he's trying to be someone that he's not, and things of that nature. So him and this girl date for a while, this Sutter and Aimee. And basically this is Amy's first time with a boyfriend, and this is Sutter's kind of, it's not really his first girlfriend, but it's the first girlfriend where he kind of got to be himself around her, and things seem to be really going really well for a while. But around the time where Sutter's family, because his family has a very kind of a dark history. The parents are divorced, and the dad's living on his own, and the dad's a huge alcoholic. The mom's always working. She's working night hours and late hours, and so she's not ever even home with Sutter. Kind of how he can get away with all this drinking stuff going on. And basically, when he meets up with the dad for the first time in years, Aimee kind of convinces him to do it because he's kind of been avoiding it for several years, and Sutter's been helping her with some personal things that's going on in her family. Things start going down a dark path, and Sutter really has to start realizing that he has to live in the now, which in this film is kind of basically you have to live with the situation you're currently in, and you got to keep doing it for every day that you live. And so Sutter later realizes that he has to live in the now, whether it's a good or a bad thing, and he really has to make the best of himself, because there's a lot of times where he really doesn't make the best of himself. This movie's kind of his journey of realizing what living in the now, the best you can, is, and to always do it for the rest of your life. So The Spectacular Now, you guys, I thought it was a good film. I unfortunately wasn't able to see it in the theater. As you can see, I finally got around to it with seeing it at Redbox, and I was pretty happy with it for the most part. I do think there was a few things I'm going to talk about here that could have been improved upon it, but overall, I thought it was a really good film. I thought it was a very nice touch to have after all these years of not having like these '80s coming of age stories. So for the positives and negatives, I do like how the film masters the early phases of dating. Kind of what it's like to experience sex for the first time and experience kissing a girl for the first time and things of that nature. Um, I thought the film had good acting overall, a very impressive film as far as acting goes. And Shailene Woodley and Jennifer Jason Leigh give great performances in this. I was really happy with their performances here. Um, Sutter is a very likable guy, but the problem is there's a few things I'm about to mention here in the negatives that I think could have been improved upon with his character. The idea of living in the now, I thought, was a very clever way of kind of teaching us as the audience, to take the best of the situation you're currently in and to make the most of it. I really like that idea of living in the now that the film presented here. There's a lot of like life recognitions moments in this film. Just a lot of things. Just like, you know what, I've had to go through that in life, or I know somebody who had to go through that, and just a lot of things throughout the film you can kind of point at and be like, you know what, that's a pretty relatable thing that they're going for there. For the negatives of this film, I don't think the film's very original. I think the film very much is something we've seen a million times before, and I really wish we could have seen something that felt a little bit more original. Some small things about Sutter I think are hard to relate to, such as why he continues to drink when things get worse, and just a few little things he does throughout the movie that are just really hard to relate to. So I think overall they could have made him a more relatable character, though he is a very likable character, so that does help. There's a lot of moments in the film where it's really hard to buy that these are high school kids. I understand that most of these actors and actresses are probably in their 20s because this was filmed last year. But there was just a lot of times where I almost felt like I was watching college kids because of all the drinking that went on and how they behaved and how some of them were very very mature about certain situations. So overall, I thought like the depiction of actual high school kids in this didn't really feel like high school kids, and I didn't think Shailene Woodley's character wasn't wrapped up too well. Just a lot of like loose ends that I think could have been tied up better that really weren't wrapped up well, I didn't think. So overall, guys, I do give the Spectacular now 8.5 out of 10. I do think it's a very good film, but like I said, just a few little loose ends, just some small things about it that are hard to relate to, specifically with the Sutter character when he, is given this bad situation. He does probably the complete opposite of what someone else in real life would have done. Some high school kid things like how they're depicted, and the fact that all of them seem to be drinking when in reality not a lot of high school kids drink as much as the film suggests they do. And overall, I just don't think it's as original as it could have been, like 20 or 30 years ago. But overall, I do think it's a very good film. I can see why a lot of people like it, why I personally enjoyed it a lot as well. I don't think it's going to go down as like an instant classic, like it's not going to be like the next 16 Candles or anything. But I do think this is a very good film. And if you do like 80s coming of age stories, I do think it's worth checking out. So make sure to check out The Spectacular now.